Hey guys, and welcome back to another Java programming tutorial. So in today's videos, we're going to be going over interfaces. Now, interfaces are, I think they're unique to Java actually, because I haven't heard of them in any other languages, but they're somewhat similar to classes. They have to do with like inheritance, and anyways, you guys will see as we go through the video, but they're pretty useful, and yeah, they're an important part of Java, so we need to learn them. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to create a new interface. Now, just like we created a new class, we're just going to right click on tutorial 1, our package, go to new, and instead of class, obviously we're going to click interface. Now, I'm just going to name this one vehicle for the example that I'm going to be doing. So I'll click vehicle, and that's all you need to do. There's no you don't have to do package, generate comments, that's fine, just do vehicle, all right? Now we have an interface called vehicle. So what is an interface? Well, pretty much it is something that is completely abstract. Now, this is kind of a new concept, but it means that we're not actually going to you can't create an instance of an interface. All it's meant to do is to be inherited from. So if we have a class like car, for example, that I've created here, car could implement the interface and use it, but we're never going to create an instance of an interface. It's just here so that we can implement it into different classes. Hope that makes sense. So inside of our interfaces, and you'll see in a second, we can only have public methods, and we actually don't define anything inside the methods or the attributes. So when I create a method in an interface, and I'll just make one now, I guess, I'm going to do, let's see here, void speed up, and we'll take as a parameter int a. That's all I do when I create a method. I don't put those the brackets, I don't do anything inside the method. I just create this. Now you can see that this is completely abstract because it doesn't actually do anything. It just defines the fact that this method exists. So similar to when you create a variable and you don't give it a value, that's kind of what we're doing here, because we're gonna use this in our car class. And I kind of have to go through all of it before you're really gonna understand. But when you create a method, just know that you don't give it any content. All you do is just say like this method will exist in any of the classes that implement this, okay? So I'm going to create a few methods here, and what do you call it, like a attribute, and then we'll just move into actually using the interface because that's the easiest way to understand it. So I'm going to say we have speed up, we're going to have slow down, and we'll have, let's go change gear as well, okay? Just giving a classic example that we're going to implement a vehicle from a car, and you guys will see what I mean in a second, okay? Change gear. Okay, and then I'm going to add a attribute. Now, any attributes that I add in here, like variables or whatever you guys want to call them, they have to be final. Now, I'm not sure if you remember in the last video, but final means that it's a constant and it cannot change, okay? Like we can't change this value. So I'm going to say final int a equals, and then let's just say 5. Okay, actually, or let's just go gears, okay? Like final int gears equals 5, saying that each thing we're using is going to have 5 gears. Now watch, if I try to just do int gears equals 5, that still works, but it's not going to work in the way that we want, okay? So just make sure whenever you're doing this, you make them final. If you want to have like variables or whatever that you want to use in all of the different classes, they must be final, okay? So right now we've defined 3 methods and we have one attribute, which is just called gears, okay? So how do we use this interface now, and how does that work? Well, the way we use it is we type implements, and you might have seen this before, and then the name of the interface. So in this case, vehicle, okay? And you can see already that we're getting a red line, we're getting an error. So there's nothing wrong here because we can implement it, but car is saying type car must implement the inherited abstract method, okay? So that means that since we've defined these 3 methods here inside of our interface of vehicle, we have to define them inside our car class. So whatever methods we put here, if we implement one of the interfaces, we have to define them, because right now they're completely abstract, and if we call them, well, we have no idea what to do because there's no content for them, right? So we're going to have to create a void, which is change gears. So I'm going to say public void change. Did I call it gears or gear? Let's see, change gear. Okay, so change gear, and then it's going to have to take one parameter. In this case, we're going to say int gear. So like what gear do we want to change to, okay? And then we're just going to go up here and we're just going to say private int gear, because we're going to define that when we change gears, all right? Okay, so now we're going to go to and make another the other one that we need. So let's just check here. We need speed up, so we'll say public void speed up, and in here we'll have int speed as like what speed or actually not speed, we're gonna go int change, so how much we're gonna speed up by, and then we'll do one more, so public void slow down like this, and again we need this change, and there we go. So this, now we're getting no errors because we've implemented all of the methods that were abstract over here, okay? Now gears, we don't need to do anything with it. It's just like if we wanted to use it, we could, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is inside, I'm actually gonna create another private int, and I'm gonna call this speed, okay? What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to just fill up these, what do you call these methods? So I'm gonna say when we change gear, we're just gonna say this dot gear equals whatever gear we're changing it to. And then for speed up, I'm going to say this dot speed, actually plus equals change. Okay. And then down here, we'll say this dot speed minus equals change. Okay. And change. Perfect. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're actually just going to add one more method just to show how this works. So we've implemented the things we need to implement from our interface. And now what we're going to do is we are going to just create another method. So in this case, I'm going to make this like a display method so that we can display our, I don't know, car pretty easily. Okay, so public void display. And inside of here, I'm just going to print out a few things to the screen. So system.out.println. And in this case, we'll just say, I am a car, comma, and then we'll just add, actually, let's say going, and how fast are we going? We're going this dot speed. And if we wanted to, we could add like a little kilometers per hour. So let's do that. And I am in gear, and we'll just add whatever the gear is. So this dot gear. Perfect. Okay. So let's now actually use this. So we have our interface vehicle, okay, and we have our car. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create a car object. So we'll say car, I don't know, let's say Ford, okay, equals new car. Okay, perfect. And now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna say car dot or Ford, I guess is what we need to do. We'll say Ford dot speed up, and let's maybe change it to 10. We'll add 10 to it. And I just realized that we're actually gonna have to make this speed default at like 0, and gears, let's just do that default 0 as well. Otherwise we're gonna run into an error. Or actually gear, I guess you can't really be in gear 0, can you? Let's change that to 1. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Ford.speed up, and then we'll say Ford.change gear, and let's just change to gear 2. Okay, and then if we want to display our Ford, we can do Ford.display. Perfect. Okay, so let's run this now and see if everything's working. So we say I'm a car going 10 kilometers an hour, and I am in gear 2. Perfect. So that's working fine, and we've implemented all that stuff from our vehicle interface. So now I'm going to show you some cool things we can add into our interfaces that make them a lot more useful. So say, for example, you've used a bunch of interfaces with a bunch of classes you've inherited from them. And now what you want to do is you want to add a method to all of those classes that are inherited from it. Well, what you could do is you could do the same thing here, and you could type something like this, and then you could go into every single one of your classes and you could change them to be whatever you want. But if you want the method to be the same for all of them, we can actually use something, this is why interfaces are kind of useful, called default, okay? So if we type default, and then maybe in this case void, and let's just say like out, like we're going to print something out, just make it easy. What we'll do here is we'll just, we can just create a method, and we can use this from any of the classes that inherit our interface, okay? So all I'll do here is I'll say system dot out dot println. In this case, I'll just say default method, okay? I know, very creative. How did I just spell system? Am I? Okay, anyways, all right, I'm tired, guys, I apologize. System.out.println, default method. Okay, so now that we have that, from within this car class, we can use that default method. So say when we display, we want to print that, and then we want to do the default. What we could do, I believe, is we can say just out, maybe? And yes, that actually works fine. So now that we have out, because that is a method within our vehicle class, and we implement it, let's see what happens when we run our program. We get I am a car going 10 kilometers an hour, and I am in gear 2, and then it says default method, And it's using that default method that we created inside of our interface. Now, I believe we can actually use static methods as well. So this would be known as something that's not a static method because we have to call it from within our class. But we can actually create static methods within our interface that we can then just call statically. Like we don't have to have an instance to call them. So if you don't know what I mean, just follow along for a second as I'm going to create a static, I don't know, let's just do like int, let's return something, let's change it up. Let's just call this math. Actually, I feel like math is a keyword. That's fine. We'll just do math, okay? We're going to take int b, and all we're going to do is we're just going to return b plus 9, okay? I know, very basic, but that's all we're going to do just to prove a point. So now, say I'm in my main.java, all right? And we get rid of this. We don't create a car object. And I want to use this static method inside of my interface. Well, what I can do is I can do vehicle dot, and then you can see it already has this function coming up, or this method, dot math, give it a value like 5. I'm just gonna actually set this equal to a variable, so we'll say int x equals that, and then we can system.out that and see what we're actually getting as a value. And in this case, we should be getting 14, right? Yeah, so 14, there we go. So that's how you can create a static method inside of your interface. So in some cases, you can kind of think of these as functions, all right? Say you had, and actually, you know what, I'll just do one as an example because this is kind of useful. If I go new interface and we call this math, okay, then inside here, you could do a bunch of static methods that will do like math operations for you. Like maybe you had the quadratic formula, maybe you had, I don't know, like Euclidean distance, like I don't know, a bunch of different math formulas. You put them all in this math interface, and then when you want to access them, you would come in here and you'd say, well, math dot maybe like square root, like sqrt, okay? And then there you'd be able to use all of those, I want to call functions, but they're really methods inside the interface really easily. So that is a really good example of when you can kind of use interfaces. So anyways, that's been it for interfaces. If you guys continue on with Java, you will see that in many cases, especially if you're making games and stuff, you're going to be implementing other people's interfaces. So it's good to know kind of how to create them, how they work in the back end. Typically, you probably won't be creating any of your own interfaces unless you have like large programs and a lot of abstraction and inheritance. But anyways, they're good to know. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you again in another one.